Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see you. My name is Paula Tusiani-Eng, and I am the co-executive director of Emotions Matter. Coming to you this morning uh, from New York on the East Coast. And while I'm doing introductory slides, I invite you to say where you're coming from in the chat. We'd love to welcome our community wherever you're coming from. It's always a joy to see everybody from Emotions Matter from around the country. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, does everyone see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Again, if you are just joining us, welcome to Emotions Matter's first webinar for our BPD month BPD Fest series. Our webinar tonight is on overcoming borderline personality disorder pathways to well-being. This is our webinar 1 on self-love and joy on the path to wellness. This is Emotions Matter, and as I'm going through the introductions, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're coming from tonight. Emotions Matter is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 2015 to support, educate, and advocate for people with borderline personality disorder. Our vision is to create a world in which every person impacted by BPD has access to treatment and resources to achieve a meaningful recovery. We are thankful that you're with us tonight, and we invite you to go to our website to learn more about us at www.emotionsmatterbpd.org. Before we start our webinar this evening, I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We are so lucky at Emotions Matter that we are able to offer peer support groups to the community at no cost because of the generosity of our corporate sponsorships and our individual donors. These include New York Presbyterian Hospital, the Francesco and Mary Giambelli Foundation, the Karen Lerner Family Foundation, the Fishman Family Foundation, Mass General Brigham McLean Hospital, Silver Hill Hospital, the Colbeth Family Fund, Boehringer Ingelheim, Eastern Services, the New England Personality Disorders Association, and DBT Works. Thank you to our sponsors for making this possible. A little bit about our webinar structure this evening. Our webinar will be 1 hour long, and the first few minutes will be a few introductory slides, and then we'll move into a panel discussion. After the panel discussion, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. You'll get instructions on how to participate in our Q&A in just a few moments. And now I'd like to turn it over to Alyssa.
Hi everyone. It's so lovely to see where everyone's from. My name is Alyssa Gross. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the peer trainer with Emotions Matter. So the Emotions Matter philosophy. Emotions Matter strives to create a safe, judgment-free space for people with borderline personality disorder. We accept that there is a spectrum of experiences within the BPD community. We honor where people are on the journey without judgment or assumptions. We encourage people to define their own path toward recovery. We speak as experts of our own lived experience, not as medical experts. Professionals on our BPD Fest panels are volunteers speaking for educational purposes. The guidelines for community engagement. Questions during sessions should be asked using the Q&A box, not the chat. Comments can be made in the chat box. Use respectful language in the session chat. Any inappropriate messaging, including harassment, bullying, or monopolizing the chat, will be deleted. We accept difference and promote acceptance, especially with regard to gender, sexual orientation, identity, race, ethnicity, age, religion, disability, or politics. Avoid explicit expressions of self-harm or trauma, which may be upsetting to others. This webinar will be recorded and available after the conference. No screenshots or recording on personal devices. The safety guidelines and disclaimer. If at any time during BPD Fest 2025 you find yourself overwhelmed, struggling, or for any reason in need of support, we encourage you to reach out to your support system. Audience members may experience intense and painful emotions, feelings, memories, thoughts, and/or reactions to content shared. Participate at your own risk. You are also welcome to take a break from BPD Fest 2025 at any time or withdraw from it entirely. In the event of a medical, including mental health emergency, please seek care through a doctor, hospital, or emergency call numbers such as 988 or 911 in the United States immediately. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelists. First, we have Clyde Clark, he, him. Clyde lives in Eastern Oregon with his amazing dog, Guy. After years of recovery from BPD, OCD, and schizoaffective disorder, he spends his time as a mentor, peer advocate, and lifelong student. He advocates for the power of healthy habits, growing purpose, and heroic level journaling. Our next speaker is joining us via pre-recorded video, and her name is Barbara Fernandez, she, her. Barbara Fernandez, born in the United States but made in Paris, is a professional stand-up comedian, voiceover artist, and singer. A rather late in life diagnosis of BPD at age 58 at the start of COVID finally helped her understand her aborted relationships, identity crisis, and professional hopscotch. She has had 28 different jobs. At the end of 2 years of DBT treatment, Barbara emerges with, for the first time, a sense of who she is. She is someone who wants to make a difference to the world in the only way that will enable her to use her favorite talents. She is a musical comedian. Our next speaker, Maria Solomon, LCSWR, she, her, is a senior clinical social worker at New York Presbyterian Hospital and manager of the Payne Whitney Day Treatment Program. She has expertise in diagnosis, assessment, and treatment of borderline personality disorder, trained in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. She also practices as a private psychotherapist and has volunteered for Emotions Matter and the NEA BPD Family Connections Program. Last but not least, we have Zephyr Soto, she, her. Zephyr is a mental health advocate, educator, and certified peer support specialist, passionate about dismantling the stigma surrounding borderline personality disorder. With a BFA in recorded music from NYU, she began her career in the music industry before transitioning to psychology. Her lived experience with BPD drives her work at the intersection of self-identity, trauma recovery, and community support, where she focuses on fostering understanding and empowerment through education and research. Thank you to all of our panelists, and I'd like to start us off with our first question. Please tell us a bit about your BPD journey. When were you diagnosed, and which symptoms impacted you the most? Clyde, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, let's start this. Um, I started, like, I got diagnosed when I was 22, and it was not a good experience. I largely felt judged, and I became reactive about it, and I would lash out verbally and against my therapist, and eventually I fired her until I found someone who a therapist who really spoke like I understood they were on my team, and that changed my life and allowed me the permission to like be on my own team and kind of start working toward my own recovery and my journey toward the joy we're talking about tonight.
Thank you so much for starting us off, Clyde. Zephyr?
Yeah, sure. I can't believe I'm 31 right now. I suppose I was diagnosed like mid-ish 20s. I mean, I've always had struggles with mental health that I knew about since as long as I could remember, honestly, but never really had the right, I suppose, framework for it and describing it in a certain way. And, went through tons of misdiagnosis over the years with depression, and I do have ADHD, so I thought maybe it was just that, to bipolar, and then finally coming to the BPD diagnosis. But even that I had to advocate for because it's, sometimes, not always, of course, but can be very stigmatizing even within the mental health profession. And, I really had to advocate like to get that diagnosis. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and talk more about the journey today.
Thank you, Zephyra. And it absolutely can be a long journey to getting that diagnosis. So that resonates. Okay, our second question. People with BPD often struggle with internal symptoms such as emptiness, self-hatred, or shame. What did this look like for you, and how did you manage to cope or overcome it? Clyde.
I learned to laugh at myself. I, I joke a lot about my mental health, and it allows me the softness of honesty. And, I write poetry, and like an example of it this afternoon, I wrote a poem called it's I can't wait to I can't wait to tell my therapist how funny I am. And it's like, how do I make this diagnosis that's so painful, taste a little sweet like a medicine that I need, and, kind of move on beyond the hurting into the healing.
Yeah, humor is such a great tool, Clyde. Thank you for highlighting that. Zephyra?
Same for me. I feel like if I'm not laughing, I'm gonna be crying all the time, just in general with everything. So I always try to see the light-hearted side of things, even as difficult as it may be. And as it goes for the internal symptoms, I feel like struggle the most with like that emptiness feeling. And another one of the criteria is like identity disturbance, or another way to put it, like that lack of sense of self is something that I really struggle with. And um, because for me, it's tied to like being able to trust myself. So if I'm feeling unstable in relationships or things that like a career path, it makes me feel like, okay, well, like clearly I can't trust myself, and it just kind of all feeds into each other, that emptiness, that lack of sense of self. How do I overcome it? I think similar to Clyde is that humor aspect, but also just being adaptable, learning to be adaptable and accepting like, hey, it's okay that um, you've changed your mind about this thing, and it makes life interesting, that's for sure. But yeah.
Yes, and it sounds like you're offering yourself grace, which is also so lovely.
Mhm.
Paula, did you have Barbara's video queued?
So for me, with the self-hatred and stuff, the biggest thing that helped me was reframing thoughts. So if I had a thought that said something like, I don't know, oh, you're awful at this, or oh, you can't do this, I would replace it. I would consciously replace it with, okay, I'm learning to do this, and I always put it in the present tense. Um, I never said I wish or I want. I always like did it as if I'm doing it now, right? So, for example, I don't know if it was something like, oh, I don't know, I can't, I can't sing. Well, I'm singing and I'm getting better, that kind of thing. So at first it was a conscious process where I had to keep, like, every time we did that thing where every time you notice a thought that's not helpful, you write the thought down and then you reframe it and you turn it into a more positive, self-loving one. And the cool thing about that was that even though at first, well, it took a long time for that to become automatic, but it is automatic now. And now those thoughts, they actually hardly ever come, which is really weird because they used to be there all the time. But when you reframe them for long enough, um, it really changes things. It's yeah, it's incredible. I mean, at the beginning, I was surprised how many thoughts like that I had. I had loads and loads and loads of, absolutely horrible self-hatred thoughts. So yeah, bit by bit, reframing those thoughts, which didn't feel very authentic at the beginning, but I stuck to it. And then, yeah, that was the one thing that just made a huge, 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 huge difference. Oh, and also I took out some words from my vocabulary. I never say I should. I always say could, because that's quite an easy replacement to do. And you'll be surprised. Even, if it's I should have done this or I should have done that, I'll say, no, I could have done this or I could have done that. and I didn't. The kind of mindfulness thing where you let yourself feel what you feel, and then, that's okay. And then it passes like a wave. So, yeah. So for me, with
That's very helpful. Thank you, Barbara.
Would I
And
be able to add on?
please go ahead,
It's
Barbara.
something that, yeah, something Barbara talks about, like reframing your thoughts. It reminds me of the saying. I like pulled it up to make sure I got the saying right. But like, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your
Yeah.
character, it becomes your destiny. So yeah, like I can definitely relate to what Barbara said. Like, the more I kind of force myself not to have those negative thoughts, like the more like my character started to change, and like everything just starts to change when you kind of have to fake it till you make it, I suppose, with forcing yourself to reframe your thoughts. But yeah, I just wanted to add that real quick.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a
Yeah.
beautiful quote.
I had a thought about that as well if I could share it. It's something I learned from ACT, and it's the idea that, okay, I have the story that I'm going with now, and there's a more helpful story on the horizon, and if I can make it funny, I'll get a gold star.
Thank you. Thank you, Clyde. Maria, how do these internal symptoms show up for your clients, and what tools can they use to cope and overcome?
So first of all, it's wonderful to be here, and all these responses are so beautiful and say so much what I'm about to say with a clinician cap on. But the emptiness, the self-hatred, the shame, those are so much the cornerstones of BPD as we know. The behaviors, the self-harm, suicidality, substance, those are the coping mechanisms in response to that. I'm not saying this is easy, but it's one thing to teach somebody to hold ice, to bring urges down, to do things that are more kind of directed to behaviors. The emptiness, those are so big. And I think that we can't flip a switch and turn empty into full or self-hatred into love. And as we always say dialectically, we want to move away from extremes and find all that wonderful place in the middle. I think, as it's been said here, the use of humor, et cetera, is important. I think there's a moment, and there's a moment when people kind of don't flip the switch, but they kind of decide, okay, I can walk to the left or I can walk to the right. And I'm really tired of being on this side. I'm going to move here. And that begins the process. It's the humor, as you pointed out. It's acceptance. It's a willingness to turn the mind in another direction. And instead of suddenly loving myself, maybe I'll just begin to like myself a little bit and start very small. And kind of like, I always think of it as like, trying on, you're trying on a new self. You're becoming a bit of an actor. The new shoe doesn't fit comfortably at first, but if you keep wearing it, it's going to mold. And that's how we become who we are. I hope that answers some of it.
It does. Thank you so much, Maria. And it often starts with that willingness to do something different.
It's letting go, because so often people, even in their misery, are so much more comfortable there. And it means I'm willing to let me throw this outfit out of the closet for good and try something new.
Absolutely. Okay, question 3. Some people with lived experience of BPD say that hobbies, passions, intellectual or vocational pursuits are helpful. What gives you pleasure or joy in your recovery? What do you do for fun? Zephyr, would you like to start us off this time?
Sorry, I wasn't unmuted. Yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely resonate. I believe it was with Barbara with the hopscotching of all the all the jobs and hobbies and doing so many things. Well, like I said before, it definitely keeps things exciting. But yeah, I have I love to always be a student, so I love learning. I love education. I'm currently back in school, and that really gives me a lot of purpose and definitely helps with the emptiness, I'd say for sure. But yeah, also, I come from a very creative background. Music was my first passion, I suppose. I call them fleeting passions to not give them too much pressure, to be like a forever passion, just in case like things change. um, but yeah, I also do like content creation and, I love video games and streaming and, being a peer support specialist and teaching as well. So all of these things really help my recovery, instead of, twiddling my thumbs and spiraling and, just living in that, just always keeping busy, but not too busy, you know, always having that balance of self-care. Yeah, doing things like this, also gives me purpose. Yeah.
And of course, you and Clyde are two of our wonderful peer support group facilitators, which we appreciate. Clyde, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah, God. Would now be an okay time to share some of that poetry, Paula? Okay. Yeah, as Zephyr was speaking, I was thinking that, like, when people asked me to cross the bridge to get to happiness, I found the joy in jumping the stones to get to the other side. And it's like, we can't follow the rules because we're suffering in a way that is not like everyone else. And so, yeah, just finding another path to that joy. This is a poem I wrote called The Joker's Shelter. I built a house of cards on a windy day. I called it home, but the big bad wolf blew. Each card was a truth. I scattered 5 jokers into the mix. Too many to win, too many to fold. When it scattered, I scrambled. Fingers cut on edges I called mine. I knew it wasn't a home I loved. I claimed I was the wolf and blamed myself for the wind. But as the cards returned, soft as regrets, I saw I had a hand in it. And maybe that matters less than the fact I'm still here. And so, yeah, it helps me reflect that, like, it is a journey and it matters where I am, not the shit in the past, to put it bluntly. So.
That's a beautiful poem, Clyde. Thank you for sharing. I see a lot of hearts. So it seems like it's been well received. And I think we have a video from Barbara now. I see people are saying that they also do knitting and volunteering. Those are all great hobbies as well.
Fun, right. So what do I do for fun? Well, for me, my vocation is my fun. I think I was lucky because over lockdown, when I got furloughed, I had always wanted to be a voiceover artist. So I thought, this is my chance. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And this is while the treatment for BPD was happening, and I couldn't leave my house because all of my treatment was over lockdown. So that was fun. There were no distractions, which meant I had to just concentrate and learn the skills and all that. There was no running away. Well, I did run. I physically ran. That was another thing that helped me that I wanted to mention. I ran every day. I still run now, like every other day. But that is hugely helpful for emotion regulation. But as for the vocational stuff, yeah, so I started doing voiceovers, and that was really helpful. And then I started doing comedy, and like now I really, this is the first time ever in my life that I can say that I actually enjoy what I do to earn money, which I never thought in a million years I would say that. And for me, it's only been the last couple of years, so it's never too late.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you, Barbara. Maria, how can people with BPD begin to identify their hobbies, passions, and such, and use it towards their recovery?
I think being willing to, it can be very hard because I think a lot of the things that people love and get pleasure from sometimes get buried in the whole process of dealing with everything else. And I think a big piece of it is, for many different reasons, for different people, permission to love doing things. Permission, permission, permission. It's okay. And whatever it is, if it gives you pleasure, that's the great thing. So I think that that is really the key, is often desperately wanting a life of joy and all that, but for many, many different reasons, it's not okay. And it's like entering like scary territory. And again, like everything, doing everything a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And it's reminding me of recently a patient of mine was struggling with this very thing. And I said, well, what have you liked? What, and this is a woman who, you know, like my age, okay. So what do you like? And she said, with sort of embarrassment, tap dancing. So she went and started tap dancing and it was wonderful. But I think that it sounds much easier than it is. What do we really love doing? Because I think there's so many things that, you know, oh, we're supposed to love reading the great books of history. Well, no, you know, it could be, you know, watching, you know, reruns of I Love Lucy. And, you know, so I think that's it. I think permission really plays a big part.
Yeah, giving ourselves permission to find that pleasure, even when we may be experiencing pain and suffering. Yeah, thank you, Maria.
Can I quickly add on?
Please do.
Sorry. Yeah, definitely that I never thought about it in that permission framework. It really resonated with me. Just permission for pleasure, trying new things when things are in scary territory. Like when I did that, you know, sort of, I wouldn't say a complete 180, but going from music to psychology as a career change. I guess that's kind of like what I had to do, just like give myself permission to try it, even if, you know, I end up not liking it or changing my mind or, you know, yeah. So I just want to say it really resonated with me. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Zephyra.
Could I share really quick? I had a quote about permission that I wrote to myself a few nights ago, and it was that it am I looking for answers or am I looking for permission to ask the question without my voice quivering?
Wow, amazing quote. Thank you, Clyde. How has BPD impacted your life and led to personal growth? Clyde, would you like to start us off?
Oh my God. So I think it's about growing a persona that I can live with. I think a lot of it is that like the reframing. I've learned to tell my therapist and stories in a way that I'm not going to cry about them later and I can inspire others. And, you know, just building toward that image I want to see of myself has allowed me to grow into someone who I can give permission to be my authentic self. Like, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Clyde. Zephyra?
Yeah, I think something that I really hadn't thought about till this moment actually, is actually giving others grace. I feel like BPD has given me the perspective, like you never know what anyone is going through, what their internal demons are, their struggles. So if maybe someone isn't the nicest to me, or you know, whatever the situation is, I'm always thinking like, you know, they might have a lot going on. Like I don't know why they're doing this or saying these things. So I think it's allowed me to just give others grace, be less judgmental, and you know, kind of give everyone a chance, I suppose, which is I guess a little ironic because you know there could be some trust issues sometimes with BPD, but I don't know, it helps me trust more and just be more open, I suppose. Um, but yeah, and also I think being like super adaptable. I think because of the core morbidity with ADHD for me, since I'm always, hyper fixating on things or going back and forth between things or shifting pleasures and, things that I'm interested in, I think being adaptable has been like a big positive out of all of this.
Yeah, those definitely sound like positives. Thank you, Zafra. And do we have a video from Barbara?
Okay, I'm not one of those people that's going to wear a T-shirt that says BPD is a superpower. I don't believe it's a superpower. I actually wouldn't wish it on. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, and I can't say what it's like to not have it, though, right? So for all I know, yeah, maybe once you go through the treatment, maybe it's better than not having. I don't know if it's better than not having it. All I do know is that I know that it apparently makes us very creative. There are lots and lots of comedians that have borderline personality disorder, which to me makes total sense because to be a good comedian, you have to think quickly, you have to think on your feet, you have to react to things really fast to what's happening in the room and stuff. You also have to have a lot of, I don't know if I'd call it empathy, but you have to be able to do what they call reading the room. So when I'm doing my thing, like I feel how people are reacting, which is super, super useful because I can feel immediately if the room is, reacting in a positive way or if they're a bit hesitant or do they need more connection? Do they need this? Do they need that? I can feel all of that. And that's, I believe, from the heightened sensitivity, right? The good old enlarged amygdala, which in that case, yeah, is definitely a benefit. And then the creativity, I mean, I've always been creative, so I don't know what it would be like to, not be. And I know people that don't have BPD that are creative, but apparently we're all very creative. And apparently a lot of us are funny. I don't know where that comes from, but my vocation is being funny, so that's a big help. Oh, the other thing is that actually this is quite a good thing. I think two good things. One good thing, I feel like I'm still very much a child. Well, not a very young child, but I do have like a childlike energy or whatever and a desire to play. So I'm not one of these, I'm, growing old and I'm just going to sink into a pit or something. I mean, I know 30-year-olds that have decided they're growing old. That to me is absolutely ridiculous. I still think very much like a kid in a lot of ways. And I think that's due to BPD. So that's quite a good thing, I believe. The other thing I've heard, I mean, I have a lot of energy, loads of energy, and I'm told that's a BPD thing. So that's definitely, super, super, super helpful. Do I always want to do things? No, but I do have a lot of energy to do them.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And for our last question, before we move on to question and answer portion of the evening, what advice do you have for others who struggle with loving themselves? Zephyr, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I think something I always live by is healing is not linear. Even, from the timeline of knowing I was going to do this panel, to now, things have been sort of up and down. And, I think just one, giving myself that grace, like we've been talking about, tonight, but also just, recognizing that it's not linear and that's okay, and it may feel like I'm taking a step back, but it's all just part of the journey, and kind of not sticking into that black and white mindset, the thinking of all is bad or all is good if something is a little bit different in my journey of recovery.
Mhm.
I hope that made sense.
That absolutely made sense. Thank you, Zephyr. Clyde?
Yeah, Paula, can we get the visual poem for this? This is a little a poem I made in my journal about my experience of kind of the egoism of my BPD. Admit insecurity, grandiosity, who am I in the gray? And I like the little ticket that says admit one. I have to choose, dang it. But like where it brings me is it brings me to a thing that I think Brene Brown said, and it's be bold, be kind, be honest. And it's like, we're as people with BPD, we're gonna have bad days when we feel like we're a piece of crap, and we're gonna have days when we feel like the king. And so, just ride those waves and enjoy yourself in the meantime. You are royalty, even if you are fallen for the moment.
Thank you so much, Clyde. I see a lot of comments in the chat that people are loving your poetry. So we're so glad that you brought it today. And Paula, may we have remarks from Barbara?
The biggest advice I have for others who struggle with loving themselves is to do that reframing your thoughts thing. That is the single biggest thing I feel that helped me, is changing the thoughts, because you don't believe, well, I didn't believe it at first when I changed the thoughts. Like, I would say the words, but I was like, yeah, I don't believe this. And the really weird thing is, when you do it for long enough, you actually start to believe it, which is astounding. And I mean, I had those thoughts for what, 58 years, something like that. So, if I can change them at 58, you can change them no matter how old you are.
That's very inspiring. Thank you, Barbara. Maria, what advice do you have for your clients struggling with loving themselves?
Well, I think the first step before love is accept, okay? And there's a wonderful term in DBT, phenomenological empathy, meaning it makes sense that, a lot of the often self-loathing, shame, all of those feelings, there's a history, there's a reason for it. And accepting that is difficult, and that it makes sense that one feels that way is, I think, the first step. And I think it's also very much about being receptive to others. Loving oneself it's very big. That's a very daunting thing. I think I prefer to think of it as, how can I think of myself as lovable? And what are the things I like in other people? Because when we think of how we evolve without realizing it, we're like patchwork. We think, oh, gee, I love that quality in that person. Let me pull that one in. I like that. And it's sort of like we're architects, but we're not building a house, we're building a self. And it's, one floor at a time. We don't suddenly have like a big, mansion. And I do think that, we can love parts of ourselves and not so much love others. That's okay. It's very mixed. But I think that relationship, and sometimes I think envy can be a very strong emotion with everybody, and I think with people with BPD has a certain meaning, and to maybe try to convert what do I envy in others, and to see what is that there that I'm envying, and how can I kind of make my version of it.
That's so helpful, and being intentional with who we are and the person we want to be. Well, I want to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you for all of your input and insight today. Some of my key takeaways were using humor, finding willingness, compassion, reframing thoughts, using hobbies and interests, giving ourselves permission to do the things we love and find pleasure in, giving people the benefit of the doubt, being adaptable, working towards an intentional image of ourselves, using creativity. Healing is not linear, living in the gray. There were so many wonderful ideas shared today. So thank you all so much. And I'd like to hand it over to Paula for our question and answer portion.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for moderating, and to all of our panelists. Before we get to Q&A, and while we do this next segment, feel free to put your questions in the questions and answers box. I thought it would be lovely to be able to share Barbara's comedy bit. How we met Barbara, who's from the UK, is that Barbara has a song on Spotify called the BPD song. She actually talks about BPD in her comedy bit in her show. She's been in the Edinburgh Festival and she tours around. And so she sent us the link, and I thought, let's listen to Barbara, and then we'll go to the Q&A.
I wrote this song. If you prefer calm, peaceful ladies who knit while we serve you a beer, if you enjoy life without drama, you may not be comfortable here. Emotions are annoying, I do anything for boring, cause frenetic isn't who I want to be. I wake up suicidal, no idea why, but I will contemplate a bungee jump, hope a bungee. BPD, while emotions running free, like 480 kids who fight inside of me. In a day I can be bipolar ADHD, don't forget psychosis and PTSD. Whee! Someone doesn't text me, my brain says it's cause you're crazy, you should die, so off I go to I need an intervention, they think I want attention. They say try breathing in and count to 3. If you know any doctors who aren't scared of hearing shockers, won't you please tell them of our plea? We don't give up on purpose, we're already feeling worthless, trying hard to fit inside society through comedy. BPD, while the motion's running free, like 480 kids who fight inside of me. In a day I can see bipolar ADHD, don't forget psychosis and PTSD. BPD, don't you wish you were like me? Every day a roller coaster ride for free. BPD, ecstasy to spare the tea. Oh, you've had your morning cup of tea. Watch genetics, watch drama, watch family. Guys, I'm single, you can do for me. Whoopee!
That was incredible.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, when I met Barbara, I was like, you have to do this for us in the States. So anyways, it's really late in the UK, which is why she video recorded, but we will send her your comments in the chat, and hopefully we will see Barbara again. So let's go to the Q&A now, and I'm just going to pull up the questions. Okay. So here's the question, and I'm going to open it up. Any panelists can jump in. Is there a cure for BPD? Will I be suffering all my life? Maria, do you want to talk?
There are BPD is treatable. I think cure gets a little tricky because, with cure, it means it's gone forever. And I think like a lot of things can come and go, but hopefully stretches of time can get longer without, but we know that DBT is a highly effective treatment. There's transference focused treatment, there EMD, various treatments. I can say that, I've seen many people over the years who have put a lot of work into treatment and are living very wonderful and productive lives.
Anyone else want to comment? Okay, thank you, Maria. Okay, we're going to go to the next question. What do you do about hopelessness and the rage as a reaction to that?
I would say express it and learn to express it in ways that other people enjoy. Suffer eloquently and find beauty in yourself. That is what I would say.
Yeah, I think to add on, I mean, I think making sure we're not bottling up those emotions, like it may be hard to experience those emotions, but just making sure that we're getting them out some way, whether it's verbally, creatively, like whatever the medium is, I think that also helps to cope with them for me personally.
Any other comments?
Just quickly, it's like so many emotions, it's important to understand they're transient. Doesn't mean they're not going to come back, but they're not permanent. And if one feels hopeless, which is a legitimate feeling, usually if one really reels back far enough, knows that there are times one has had hope and that it will come again.
Thank you. Okay, here's another question. What helps with staying consistent? Examples, going to work, mindfulness, DBT. Maybe if each of the panelists can comment and give some examples on what's helped them to stay consistent.
I can go. Routine is really big for me. Um, it doesn't even need to be like a big routine or a a crazy I just having a routine really keeps me consistent, physically, mentally, all the itties. And also journaling. I try to journal and stay consistent with that every night. I usually like, do my regular journaling and do a few different prompts like daily gratitude, today's wins, like even if it's a small win, like, hey, I took down the garbage today. Like that will help me to feel better. And I also do two prompts as well, like what has value that I can bring to tomorrow and what has no value that I can leave behind. So I try to do that every night, and that really helps me stay consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both of those, journaling and structure for yourself. Like I tell people, as long as I keep my habit of journaling, the rest of the day just works itself out, you know. As long as I remember what I'm grateful for, remember where I need to keep my attention, and love myself, everything else will be fine.
I'll just add on that, to do the things that we want to do routinely, we're not always going to want to do them, gung ho, and we don't need motivation to do things. We just need to do them.
Thank you. Okay, here's another question. What is the source for giving oneself permission if I have an unstable sense of self? Okay, there's a sub question or comment here for context. Context. Um, I identify as a sugar addict from the age of 4 in a family of dry drunk. So I do not have a safe self or locus sense of self. I'm struggling to understand who I am and which part of me I am currently in. So how does mindset's permission doing enough grace work as you are slowly unfolding or building a new sense of self, quote, on a beach under a tidal line, end quote, lack of foundation? What is the source for giving oneself permission if you have an unstable sense of self? Can anyone think of examples from their journey, which might like give a time you were at that moment when it was hard to give yourself permission? You felt very unstable, but you had to move forward.
I don't know if it's directly that, but like the idea I sit with is that, I'm just going to try the me of today on. And if I like it in the future, I'll keep trying it and love myself for that. And eventually I tried on the same outfit enough that it fit. So that's kind of.
So just trying something just for today. like not putting a lot of pressure for like a
Yeah.
long-term commitment, just trying
Yeah.
something small, okay, every
Yeah.
day.
No pressure on yourself. Just love yourself for what you like about yourself.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely agree. I guess I'm sort of like in that I don't want to say dilemma right now, but like, doing the psychology degree and people keep asking me like, oh, what are you going to do after? Like, and I'm like, oh, maybe a master's, maybe a PhD. Like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, why don't you know? And I'm like, it's fine that I don't know. It's, I want to take it day by day and see how I develop, how I grow. And I think just kind of accepting that it's okay that you don't know and you don't know where life's going to take you. Like, I definitely wouldn't have thought it would lead me here doing this webinar. So yeah, I think just accepting that the unknown is okay, which is really scary, but possible.
thank you so much. Okay, here's another question. I feel like I deep down truly do not belong. How can I learn to love myself when it feels like it's fake, not real, not lovable?
I would say be patient. It takes a while, and just be patient to, do the work every day, do some piece of it, and it will just accrue and accrue and accrue and accrue, and kind of let go, do more of the thinking and the doing part, and not, is it meeting this, is it that? That comes at the end or along the way.
Can I add a comment? As someone with lived experience of BPD, a question that I've been asking myself recently is, how can I be my own best friend? How can I self-validate, self-encourage? Because those times when we feel like we don't belong, and maybe we don't belong in a particular situation, I can always be my own best friend. So in any moment, I'll put my hands on my heart and I'll just say, how can I be my own best friend? And I found that to be very helpful.
I like to think about the benefits of pride and say, Clyde, how can you love yourself in a way that your future self is proud of you? Like how can I have that type of day where my future self looks back and loves the me that is suffering in this moment?
Thank you. Here's another question that is similar, yeah, different. How do you move from being comfortable in your misery to being willing to try something new? How do you move from being comfortable in your misery so it's being willing to try something new, being willing to take the first step? Any tips or suggestions? Alyssa, go ahead.
Could you say that I was in so much misery and suffering? Maybe I just have to learn the same lesson many times. Like going down this one path creates misery and suffering, the self-hatred thoughts, ruminating on shame. I had to experience the pain of those thoughts until I was absolutely willing to just try something else. So for me, it was just the hard knocks of being ineffective. Finally, I found that willingness to say, you know what? Let me try something else. Maybe this self-love thing, let me just give it what do I have to lose? Nothing.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Go ahead, Maria.
It's reminding me, I think it's a little bit about addiction. It's like, let me just try one day without whatever the thing is, and another and another. And yeah, I just feel better from it, because some of those patterns have that like somewhat addictive quality. You're kind of hooked on a way of thinking or perceiving. You try it, you do one day, and then feels a little better.
Thank you. Here's question specifically for Clyde, and we have a number of questions and we have a few more minutes, so we may not get to everybody, but we're going to try to get through a few more questions. Clyde, thank you for sharing your poems. I'm wondering if you have an online blog where you post your writing or where I could read more of your work.
Oh, that answers the question to the anxiety I was having about not having a social media presence earlier today. So thank you for speaking to my lack of effort. But I would like to in the near future. And, you know, if you look for me, you might find me in the next few weeks. So.
Thank you. Okay, here's the question. What are your views specifically on medication for BPD? Is there anything specific?
There's no medication for BPD, but BPD is often comorbid with affective disorders, often PTSD, often, bipolar disorder, all kinds of other things for which medication can help. So some of the components that contribute to BPD and comorbid disorders have medications. I always like to think of skills, insights as part of the medication cabinet.
Okay. We are at 7:56, so I don't know that we're going to get through the rest of the questions. Let's see. Okay, let's just try maybe two more questions, and then we have a few announcements before we close. What skill or technique do you use to decide on how to set boundaries with people? I find my high level of empathy can translate into not standing up for myself. Any suggestions around boundaries?
Yeah, I kind of ask myself, where are my boundaries when someone walks away? Like, where am I setting them when no one is present? And I don't have to match them to see myself.
Thank you, Clyde. And I guess the final question, is it important or helpful to distinguish between complex trauma and BPD in order to find the right modality of treatment? I know many people with BPD, also some people with BPD also have a trauma history. About 30% of people with BPD. I don't know if Maria, you want to comment on.
Well, I think I'm certainly from the school that one needs to have some stable foundation to be able to absorb the work that is necessary when dealing with trauma. So I am not a big supporter of doing trauma work when your emotions are so dysregulated and you have no way of kind of governing them. Hope that answers it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let me just close this. So on behalf of Emotions Matter, we of course want to thank our panelists. It's been an incredible journey to work with each of you as we've been preparing this webinar for the last couple of months. We're sorry that we could not get to all of the questions. If you have an individual question that we were not able to answer, please feel free to email us at info@emotionsmatterbpd.org, and we will try to answer you as best that we can or find an answer for you if we don't have it. And we also have resources if you'd like to reach out to us. So a couple of announcements that we want to go over before the end of the time, and I'm going to ask Elizabeth, who's monitoring our chat tonight, to put a couple of things in the chat for us, including our post-event survey. This was the first of our BPD Fest series. Our series is 4 webinars. 2 are in April and 2 are in May. Our next webinar is next Wednesday evening, April 30th, and it'll be on the journey from diagnosis to care. We have 3 individuals who are adolescents and young adults who will talk about their journey to getting a diagnosis and finding treatment and moving toward wellness. And then we have Dr. Alex Shep, who is a BPD specialist clinician who will talk about the journey to care from his perspective. And so we hope you will join us next week, and you will be getting the Zoom link to this 24 to 48 hours before the webinar. So stay tuned and look for emails from Emotions Matter. And then our consecutive webinars will be coming up on May 7th and then May 21st. Another, really, really exciting thing about this time of year at Emotions Matter is our main fundraiser of the year is our Walk for BPD. It is coming up on Sunday, June 1st at Pier 46 in New York City, but also virtually. We have people that participate from all over the country, and we're so excited to have a cool map on our website that highlights where people are getting involved in the walk. It's more than just a fundraiser. It's a powerful way to raise awareness, to show support, and to build community for people living with BPD. Our goal is to get participants involved from around the country. If you're a virtual walker, you can actually get one of our t-shirts and walk in your community. So you can go to our website or to our Give Butter link and sign up, walk, form a team. Our fundraising goal is $100,000, and this is a substantial part of our budget so that we can continue offering peer support programs at no cost to the community. So we do encourage you to walk in any way that you can, make a donation, get involved. If you'd like to volunteer at the walk, if you are in the Metro New York area, or if you want to travel in, reach out. We're always looking for volunteers to help us on the walk route and to make this a successful event. It will also be live streamed if you're watching where you are. Finally, we do have a survey. We value your feedback. We come up with the topics of our webinars based on the feedback from our community. So these topics are all things that have been mentioned before. This is a SurveyMonkey link. We will send it out tomorrow as well as in a post-event email. But we do encourage you to give us your feedback on your experience of this event. So again, from everybody at Emotions Matter, we're so grateful that you're here tonight. Thank you again to our panelists, and we wish you all the best and hope to see you next week at the next webinar. Take care now.